Alex Marquez has successfully undergone surgery on his fractured right collarbone. The operation was performed on Sunday evening at the Hospital Universitari de Catalunya in Sant Cugat, Barcelona, by the team of specialists at the hospital. A plate was inserted to stabilize the fracture. The procedure went without complications. Alex posted from his hospital bed on Sunday night. "Everything is under control. I have surgery tonight, but I could not be in better hands. Thank you all so much for your concern and for all the kind messages I am receiving." By Monday morning, during the post-race test at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, confirmed reports indicated the surgery had been successful and Alex was preparing to return to Madrid to begin his rehabilitation. He suffered a broken right collarbone, which has now been surgically repaired. He also suffered a marginal fracture of the 7th cervical vertebra, the C7 vertebra. That second injury does not require surgical intervention according to the initial diagnosis, but will be evaluated further in the coming days. The rider who won the closest sprint in MotoGP history on Saturday arrived at the starting grid 24 hours later, hoping to complete a perfect home weekend. He left in an ambulance. He is now recovering from surgery. And the Marquez family, which has now had both brothers operated on within the space of 1 week, is dealing with one of the most difficult periods in their shared MotoGP history. Let us go through exactly what the injuries mean, what the recovery timeline looks like, and what happens next for Alex Marquez and Gresini Racing. From every press conference to every qualifying lap to every race result, we follow MotoGP all year, so you do not have to. Subscribe and stay in the paddock with us. Start with the crash itself because the sequence of events explains the injuries. On lap 12 of 24, Pedro Acosta's KTM suffered a suspected electronics failure on the back straight, approaching turn 10. The bike lost power suddenly. Acosta raised his hand to warn riders behind. Alex Marquez was directly behind Acosta, running at racing speed with minimal gap. He had less than a second to react. He darted right to avoid a direct rear collision, clipped the back of the KTM, and was deflected onto the grass at high speed. On the grass, with no grip, the bike became entirely uncontrollable. Alex was thrown from the Ducati. The bike disintegrated as it cartwheeled through the gravel. Alex hit the ground with significant force. He was treated at the side of the circuit, conscious throughout, transferred to the medical center, and then taken by ambulance to hospital for further examination. The specific injuries confirmed by the official Gresini statement are two. First, a fracture of the right clavicle, the collarbone. That fracture was stabilized surgically on Sunday evening with a plate, meaning a metal plate has been fixed across the fracture site to hold the bone in the correct alignment while it heals. That is standard surgical treatment for a collarbone fracture when the break is displaced or unstable. The plate allows the bone to heal in the correct position and reduces the risk of refracture when the rider returns to physical activity. Second, a marginal fracture of the C7 vertebra. The C7 is the 7th cervical vertebra, the lowest bone in the neck where the neck meets the upper back. A marginal fracture means the fracture is at the edge or corner of the vertebra, not through the main body of the bone. This type of fracture is typically less severe than a body fracture and is often managed conservatively, meaning with rest and monitoring rather than surgery. Gresini confirmed that the C7 fracture will be evaluated further in the coming days. The initial diagnosis does not require surgery. The question now is the recovery timeline for both injuries. A collarbone fracture, stabilized with a plate, typically heals within 6 to 8 weeks. The plate provides stability that allows the bone to knit without immobilization of the entire shoulder, which means rehabilitation can begin relatively quickly after surgery. Most riders with plated clavicle fractures are able to return to racing within 6 to 10 weeks depending on how the bone heals, how physical rehabilitation progresses, and how the rider's body responds. Alex Marquez is 30 years old, physically fit, and has experienced injury rehabilitation before. All of those factors are positive for his recovery speed. The C7 vertebra fracture is the less certain injury in terms of timeline. Cervical vertebra fractures, even marginal ones, require very careful management because of the proximity to the spinal cord. Even though the initial diagnosis does not require surgery, the medical team will need to confirm over the coming week that the fracture is fully stable, that there is no movement of the bone fragments, and that the spinal cord and nerve roots are not affected. If those evaluations come back clean, Alex's return to racing will be primarily limited by the collarbone recovery. If the C7 fracture shows any complications, the timeline extends significantly. For the Mugello Grand Prix in 2 weeks, the honest assessment is that Alex Marquez will not be racing. The surgery alone requires a minimum period of recovery before any physical loading of the shoulder is safe. The C7 evaluation needs to be completed. Rehabilitation needs to begin. 2 weeks is not enough time to go from collarbone surgery and a C7 fracture to racing a MotoGP bike at one of the fastest circuits on the calendar. The earliest realistic return is the Dutch Grand Prix at Assen in late June, which would give him approximately 5 to 6 weeks from surgery. Even that depends on the C7 healing without complications. Alex himself was characteristically positive on social media. Beyond the immediate post-surgery message confirming the procedure went well, he has been reassuring fans across his platforms. That positivity is genuine but should be understood in the context of a rider who does not want to show weakness publicly. The medical reality is more complex than the social media messages suggest, and the coming week of C7 evaluations will be the defining factor in how quickly he can realistically target a return date. Now, the broader context of the Marquez family situation, because it is impossible to ignore. Marc Marquez underwent double surgery 9 days ago in Madrid after his Le Mans sprint crash. He had a 5th metatarsal fracture in his right foot, stabilized, and had 2 damaged screws, plus a bone fragment removed from his shoulder in a pre-planned operation. Marc has been confirmed absent for at least the French and Catalan Grand Prix and is targeting Mugello as his earliest realistic return. His return timeline from Le Mans surgery is itself uncertain, with Alex hinting on Monday at the Catalan post-race test that Marc may also miss Mugello. Now Alex himself is recovering from collarbone surgery and a C7 fracture. Both brothers are at home recovering simultaneously. Gresini Racing, which runs Alex's bike and is closely connected to Marc's Ducati program, is navigating one of the most challenging periods in its recent history. For Gresini specifically, the loss of Alex for the next several weeks is a significant competitive blow. He won the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez earlier this season. He won the Catalan sprint by 0.041 seconds on Saturday. He was fighting for the Grand Prix lead when the crash occurred. Alex has been consistently the most competitive Ducati satellite rider of the season, outperforming the factory team on multiple race weekends. His absence over the coming rounds removes Gresini's best chance of podium finishes and championship points accumulation. For the championship picture, Alex sits in the standings with points accumulated from a strong opening 6 rounds. His Catalan Grand Prix result, due to the crash, contributes 0 points for Sunday. The sprint victory on Saturday contributed 12. With the post-race penalties affecting multiple riders' Sunday points, the detailed championship standings require careful verification. What is clear is that Alex's injury means he loses points at races he was genuinely capable of winning. The gap to the top of the championship widens not because of his pace, but because of a mechanical failure on another rider's bike. Pedro Acosta has spoken about the aftermath of the crash in terms that deserve attention. Acosta was critical of the decision to restart the race after the first red flag, describing the situation as awful and expressing concern about the safety of riders being asked to restart a race in which so much had already gone wrong. His exact words were pointed. "It is awful we acted as if nothing happened. That is a rider who was involved in the initial incident, who had his own bike fail, who watched Alex Marquez crash at close range, and who then had to restart and race for the rest of the afternoon." Acosta's criticism of the decision to restart deserves serious consideration from MotoGP officials. The 2 red flags and 3 restarts at Catalan have produced a paddock-wide conversation about race direction protocols after major incidents. For the wider paddock, the reaction to Alex's surgery news has been immediate and warm. Multiple riders and team members expressed relief that the surgery went well and wished him a fast recovery. Di Gianantonio, who won the race after being struck by debris from Alex's destroyed Ducati, spoke directly about the human cost of the afternoon in his victory celebration. "First of all, I really hope that everyone is safe. The win was celebrated, but the context was acknowledged. The post-race test at the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya on Monday continued with the paddock fully aware that 2 riders from the previous day's race were recovering in hospital. The Catalan Grand Prix will be remembered as the most chaotic Grand Prix of the 2026 season. 2 riders hospitalized, 2 red flags, 3 restarts, post-race tire pressure penalties that changed the official results. An official race result that required confirmation after penalties. And at the center of all of it, Alex Marquez, who had delivered the closest sprint victory in MotoGP history on Saturday and was in surgery 24 hours later. What do you think? Based on the confirmed injuries, when do you realistically expect Alex Marquez to return to MotoGP racing? Is Pedro Acosta's criticism of the decision to restart the race after the first red flag a valid safety concern that MotoGP officials should address before the Italian Grand Prix? And does the fact that both Marquez brothers are now simultaneously recovering from surgery represent a turning point in the 2026 season that opens up the championship to the wider field? Drop your predictions in the comments, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like button and subscribe for more MotoGP news. I'll catch you in the next one.